Hi everyone, so today's video is about playing with 30 FPS on PC. I decided to make some explanations since a lot of people get it wrong. And first I want to elaborate a bit on my opinion on this topic. If you're here only to see instructions, you can skip to that part of the video where I'll show you how to make 30 FPS on PC smooth, just like on consoles. So the whole idea of playing with 30 FPS is up for debate. A lot of people, especially PC gamers, consider it stuttery, unstable, and generally just not responsive enough for a smooth gameplay experience. However, console players are usually way more tolerated to having less frames. All of them have their reasons. There is a common misconception that 30 frames feel way better on consoles compared to PC. Well, you can measure your frames, you can check your graphic settings, compare them to the PC version of a game, but a smooth gaming experience is something that you can't measure. You can only feel it during your gaming session. Now you may ask me an obvious question. Why would anyone play with 30 FPS on PC? Honestly, the more I think about it, the more reasons I see. First of all, 30 FPS has been a standard for almost 30 years now, since the first generation of Microsoft and Sony consoles were introduced. Even now, many developers lean towards visuals over performance, or simply cannot optimize their games with all that modern technology. As a PC player, such as myself, I can achieve 60 and more frames in most of the games by tweaking some in-game settings. However, my GPU isn't powerful enough for ray tracing or gaming above 3080p in general. I wouldn't be able to achieve that performance on higher resolutions even if I had a 4K display. Now don't think that 49 owners are in much better position. As many of you may know, 4K gaming with higher settings in modern games is only possible thanks to DLSS and other technologies that perform resolution scaling. If you really want to play with the native resolution, then you might as well get a stuttery mess about 40 to 50 frames per second with inconsistent frame time. So consider locking your FPS at 30. Before we get to the main options mentioned on the screen, I want to point out that your smooth gaming experience mostly depends on the game you play. I would never recommend you playing fast-paced shooters such as Doom or Call of Duty with 30 frames. For these games, do all you can to achieve at least 60 constant FPS. Lower all your settings. Think about lowering your resolution even, seriously. Now let's get to the point. So the main reason why console games feel so smooth is Vsync. I watched YouTubers about how to make it work with 30 FPS and only a few of them actually knew how to do it. Some guides will tell you to create a custom resolution with 30 Hz and simply turn Vsync on. It will work for you, but only if you have a monitor that can operate at this range. For instance, I can make my display run as low as 50 Hz and only with the HDMI cable. With DisplayPort, it only goes 60 and above. Another solution will be to enable half refresh rate Vsync in your Nvidia control panel, but that option is only available for monitors that support variable refresh rate. I will show you how anyone can achieve half refresh rate Vsync. This method requires a small third-party software called Nvidia Profile Inspector. You can find the link in the description. Make sure that your monitor is currently running at 60 Hz because we are going to divide it by 2 and make it 30. The option we are looking for is actually available for everyone, but it is hidden in the default Nvidia panel. You won't find it there. So here's how you enable it. I tried it on few games. You can change the setting in the dedicated games profile or globally. I found out it works better when you change the global settings because some games just didn't see the change. And for some reason, it didn't work with the Vulkan API, only DirectX games. So if you have an option in game to change your API to DirectX, you better do it now. And it should work both with full screen and window modes. Don't forget to turn the Vsync off in the in-game settings. This one is important. Here are some additional settings that I recommend you to use when locking your FPS at 30. These settings are available both in the Nvidia profile inspector and the default Nvidia control panel. So these are triple buffering, set it to on to improve the overall image stability of the game. Also, you can choose between 1 to 4 prevented frames just to make it more smoother. A bit less responsive, yes, it adds some input lag, but you trade your gaming smoothness for responsiveness here. Also, I don't recommend you to use ultra low latency both here and the in-game settings if a game supports it, because you don't need it. The second must-have thing to make a game much smoother and remove any stutters is to get a fixed frame time. While our FPS is already locked at 30, the frame time will be inconsistent. To fix it, we need another third-party software, which is MSI Afterburner. You can download it by following the link in the description. This program has a feature that we are going to use. It's called Viva Tuner Statistics Server. So by locking our FPS at 30 here, this software creates the perfect frame time. There are many ways to lock your frame rate. You can do it in the Nvidia panel. You can do it in-game, and there are many ways. But our FPS is already locked, and the best frame time is achieved by using RTSS. Now we get to optional settings that will highly improve your gaming experience. The third option is to use a controller instead of a mouse and keyboard. It is way more suitable for smooth gameplay, and actually one of the reasons console players don't complain much about 30 FPS. If you still want to use a mouse or don't have a controller, I recommend you to lower your sensitivity and use the in-game settings to smooth out your mouse movement if such settings are available. In the today's example game, Red Dead Redemption 2, there is a setting I will show you later. Also, there are emulators that make your mouse behave like a stick on a controller, but I won't get into that. The next option is motion blur. I know some people hate it, it's controversial, but there is a reason that most of the console games use it, and they use it a lot. It is actually implemented differently throughout the games. Some games really do it much better than the others, and it undoubtedly makes motion in games appear much smoother. It is recommended to enable the setting, especially when playing at 30 FPS. Beside the settings that I already mentioned, I also suggest you to use anti-aliasing. You can use TAA, FXA, or both, anything that is available in the in-game settings. Again, it's down to your personal preference, but the more blurry your in-game surroundings become, the smoother all the motion in-game feels. Also, if you have a Vsync or FreeSync compatible monitor, you better turn it on. Now let's launch the game and see how it all looks like. Now the game is up and running. As you can see, I already have 30 FPS, although I didn't use the frame rate limit when launching the game. And I also recommend you do the same when launching the game for the first time, just to make sure that your Vsync is working properly. If you have 30 FPS like me, or any desirable refresh rate that you set earlier using the Vsync in the Nvidia profile inspector, this is how you know that it is now working properly, and you can set the frame limit later on. It's okay, it can be done anytime. It's totally fine. Now let's get to the in-game settings. And now we go to the graphics settings. As you can see, I played a windowed borderless. I prefer it over full screen mode, especially when I play with the controller at 30 FPS. I just found out it is a bit smoother compared to full screen. I'm not gonna lie, it adds some additional input lag, but come on, we don't care about input lag. We already play at 30 FPS the input lag is already insane. So it's totally up to you. What is important is to turn off your Vsync, turn on triple buffering, better disable Nvidia Reflex Low Latency. All the graphic settings totally depend on your hardware. You can play with them as much as you like. What is important, as I mentioned earlier, is to use DirectX. This game RDR2, it lets you choose between Vulkan API and DirectX 12. And unfortunately, the method I'm now showing to you didn't work with Vulkan API, so you better use DirectX. So the last thing that I wanted to mention is the controls option. It is strictly for mouse users. I still recommend you to use a controller if you have one, but if you don't, well, there's an additional setting that's called direct input for your mouse. You better turn it on. It's not available in all games, but in Rockstar games there is an option. And you can set your mouse smoothing to the maximum level. It will make your mouse much smoother, behave sort of like a controller, more this way. And as I said earlier, it's better to lower all your in-game sensitivity or your DPI. You just need to understand that 30 FPS gaming was initially designed for console players, for players that use a controller instead of a mouse. So I'm not gonna lie, 30 FPS is not that responsive. You won't be able to aim that precisely or move your mouse around very much, do all that stuff. So 30 FPS is like watching a movie. You don't have much control over it. And here we are. As you can see, I have somehow stable 30 FPS. It's locked at 30. It typically doesn't go any lower than this. And the game is already kind of smooth, even at 30 FPS, but there is a problem. And the problem is my frame time. As you can see in the top left corner of the screen, my frame time is not consistent at all. And what causes it? Well, I still didn't lock my frame limit in RTSS. So we open the reward tuner. We set my frame rate limit to 30. And wait a second. Yeah. And now our frame time is perfect. Here, the smoothest 30 FPS experience that you can get is it's just the same as on the consoles basically, especially when you play with the controller. And this is as smooth as you can get. Just wanted to talk a bit about playing this game and played at 30 FPS overall, because for some people it's totally unplayable. And whether you like it or not, this game was initially released on the past generation consoles, and it was meant to be played like this because hardware limitations obviously, and console players, poor console players, they never have a choice. So it was only a recent addition to the last generation consoles when they were finally able to play at 60 frames, and PC players with expensive GPUs can play with higher graphic settings and higher frame rates. But I'm not gonna lie, I actually played this game and I completed it with 60 FPS. I played with the mouse and the keyboard, not with the controller like I am doing right now. And I've done a great job to achieve 60 FPS in this game. I would not be able, the point is, I would not be able to play with the current graphic settings while also having consistent 60 FPS. So I have a choice, like console players on PS4, they didn't have a choice. But I have a choice on PC. I can lower my graphic settings, play at 60 FPS. I can set up much higher graphic settings and play at 30 FPS, or well, my monitor allows me to set up a refresh rate all the way up to 144. So let's say you want you wanted not 30 FPS but like 40 FPS or 44 FPS, and you wanted to Vsync that frame rate to make it smooth, just like right now on the screen. And you can really play with it. You can create a custom resolution in Nvidia. Let's say set it up to 80. So now you can use the same method sorry, and divide your frame rate, I'm sorry, your refresh rate of your monitor to 40. You can divide it by 2, so it will be 40, and so on and so on. So there are many options. Well, as a PC player, you can do as much as you like. All the stuff that they do in consoles is available for PC players as well, as you can see. So you have a choice. You can play with the mouse, you can play with the controller, you can tweak your graphics settings, your monitor settings. It's all up to you. So, okay, that's gonna be all for today.